Okay, hello and welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. It's been a long time in the making.
Thank you for having me, Bethan. I'm really excited too.
Yeah, so could you just say to the people at home, give them a bit of background about you, introduce yourself for us?
Hi, my name is Fab, like the ice cream. If you are in any way, shape, or form connected to the UK, you'll get the reference.
Yeah.
If not, it's literally Fab. I am a marketing consultant. I am an author. I am a head teacher of a school, which I'm sure we'll get into. And I've been in marketing for 15 years. I wrote a couple of books, as I said, one called Reclaim Your Time Off, which won a couple of awards, Little Bad Boy. So what you can get is that I love marketing, but I also love systems. Obviously, Reclaiming Your Time Off is all about that.
Uh-huh.
And in the last 15 years, a lot of what I've done has been just trying to find my way of doing things that would actually be in line with how I think some things should be. And marketing has been obviously a big thread for me. And I realized that marketing should be very different than what sometimes we perceive it, whether we are
Yeah.
marketers, whether we're audiences, right? And that's why I call myself a marketing rebel and I call our students marketing rebels. If you are in the podcast medium, I'm showing my t-shirt that says marketing rebel, which is an interesting name because it came up by chance. I didn't know what to call us, for alt
Hmm.
marketing school, which is alternatives. That's my company. I didn't know what to call us. And then I was like, wait a second.
Marketing
um,
rebels.
it's because we do things differently. Even if the
Hmm.
difference is making a human, impactful, fun, kind, it still is different than sometimes what we perceive marketing to be. So that's kind of what I do, teach people and help people market to hearts.
Yeah, and I love that because I think marketing can get a bad rap. Actually, I was in a meeting last week and somebody said that they were told that because they were a marketer, they just had to be manipulative in their nature, like that it was just a standard that marketeers are manipulative. And I was a little bit outraged because I get that we, play with emotion in our content and we're always looking to trigger a reaction from someone. But I like to think that I do everything from a great place. And the word manipulation and some of the context that people have around marketing is often like we're tricking them and we're forcing them into doing something we don't want them to do, probably because of big corporations doing stuff that are a little bit under the radar and under the table. But yeah, I am 100% with you. Like everything I do comes from it feeling good, whether that's for my coaching, but even with my agency clients, like if they want to do things that I don't agree with, I can't work with them. And I feel like there is a change in the tide, especially with female marketers. I feel that we want stuff to feel aligned and authentic.
It's what, just to quote, pop culture quote, to quote my love for Marvel, or anything of that ilk, with great power comes great responsibility. Am I
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If Peter had to live with that, if you don't know the reference, I'm really sorry. So shall we. And actually, there's a lot of power in marketing because if you ask me what marketing is, within my definition, is the art of building relationships
Yeah,
at
agreed.
scale, especially online. Obviously, offline too. You can work that way, but if you look at it, the online side of it, that's actually what it is you're building relationships with people to take them through a journey that gets them to know, like, and trust you. And with that, you can do it both ways. You can
Hmm.
trick them into thinking you are the right person for them. But one of the things that I say to our students all the time, and again, even to our clients, I always say everybody says that marketing is persuasion. For me, great marketing is direction. I will tell you what we
Mm.
do. I will tell you if these are your problems, if these are your needs, we can help you. But if that doesn't resonate or is not the right time,
Yeah.
I'm going to also to remind you that it's okay, or I'm going to direct you to the right place, or I'm going to direct you to the right solution. And that shows a bit of boldness, that shows confidence as well. You can agree with it or not, and I totally appreciate,
Mm.
but that's what you will get from us, from me, and from what we teach our students as well. Because when marketing is not more persuasion, becomes direction, then you put a lot of pressure out of yourself and others as well, I think.
Yeah, no, I massively relate and rate that take. It's refreshing. I think in the space of online where there's like very little nuance with TikTok and the hooks that you see, people talk about marketing and it can be like quite black and white and be like, it has to be this. But I do think it means to different people different things. And I like that take. I think it feels like it hits home for me at least.
Oh, to be honest, I'm really, really glad. And actually, going back to the TikTok piece very briefly, one of my co-hosts on the podcast, so we have a podcast, Alt Marketing School, literally, you can find podcasts there. And every month, some of our co-hosts come back, and Becca is one of the one, Rebecca Holloway. Shout out to Becca. And literally, we recorded one episode that's why it's fresh in my head. And she was saying how, despite that being the case a bit more on TikTok, she also has seen a small shift on the platform of people actually trying to educate and reframe a bit the idea that maybe you should focus on strategy. Like hacks actually have their shelf life if you
Yeah.
don't know how to use them or to adapt them, because that's the other thing, because we might talk about hacks and things, especially if you talk about social media, for example. And I don't think they're a bad thing per se. It's just the way that they've been packaged recently, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm very much an advocate of two things can be true. And I'm conscious, and I say all the time that I contradict myself if you were to take certain things out of context, because I do see black, white, and grey in every bloody separate thing that we're dealing with. It's not that simple. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, right? It has to be strategy first. Because if you have the strategy first, then you can layer the hacks on top, but you understand why they're working, what you need to change. The issues I see are when people don't have either just a general understanding around social media, around marketing, around strategy and the skill of it. Then when they're told to implement something and they do, if it works, they're like, great. But when it stops working, it's like, oh, well, now I'm scrambling again for the next fad, the next thing that can help. Which actually takes me on to, you're talking about hacks, we're talking about like how now hacks are seen as demonized and that we should never use them. I feel like the nature of social media right now and the nature of marketing just feels constantly changing. And I wonder, as somebody who educates in the marketing space, like how the hell do you keep up with this and keep up with like your syllabus reflecting what the experience of people marketing is?
That's a great question. I'm going to start with the syllabus part, and then I'm going to get back into the just keeping up with this. The syllabus part is the syllabus is one, constantly updated. So in a way that every cohort we update it before we present it to you. But what we teach on demand and what we have devised with our teachers, or if I teach regardless, even if it gets updated if needed, it is still more of a timeless understanding. So I'm going to give you an example for our SEO masterclass is also coming out. So there is an element of understanding what SEO is and the shifts that are happening. So it might be that we need to refresh it in a couple of years, but everything is very timeless in the way that we explain that if you look at SEO from a human perspective, it's about user intent, it's about why SEO exists and how we use it as a user. So then as a marketer, you can make better choices. So when you think about that, we always have the caveat that things will be updated if they need refreshing, but we also try with everything we do to have a very foundational piece. And just on the last bit of the syllabus, certification is like that, but then the certification and our student community also has amazing workshops, including one that this lovely lady is doing. There are 30 minutes usually from ourselves or guest teachers, and those are things that happen. And when they happen, obviously we might talk about more topical things because that makes sense. And then people can go back to them and watch them. If they become really outdated, we reserve the right to then kind of archive them. But that is where we say, okay, this is where we can talk about topical stuff that might be becoming slightly irrelevant because there's a shift in the market, and that is okay. But I think it's important that whenever you're learning something, you learn, first of all, some of the more timeless foundations. Second answer to the question was about how do we keep up? It's my job, so that's different. And I think that's another thing that remiss to say, we are marketing school. So of course, I'm going to tell you, find somebody like ourselves, it doesn't have to be us, that you can be a part of that will do the work for you if you're a marketer. So remiss, if we ignore that for a second, in general, it's not every marketer's job to be constantly sourcing directly what the changes are. You should have, once again, I'm going to repeat myself, a trusted tool or community or resource that can do the hard work for you. If you like more about reading, for example, and just kind of getting information and you're only social media based, then you go to a platform that gives you like in-depth social media news, and maybe it's more like a podcast. It doesn't matter. Understand what you need to be updated on, because you don't have to be updated on anything. It's not everything. It's just what matters to you as a marketer. And yeah, unless you are an educator in the marketing space, you shouldn't know everything or trying to be on top of things. Get the help that you need, whatever that might be, paid, free. There are plenty of options. Find a format that helps you retain the information and put it into practice.
I actually really rate that, because I think when I first started freelancing, I felt a lot more pressure to stay top of the game in terms of like learning new stuff constantly. And it was exhausting. Like it became a full-time job to just keep up with all the updates that were happening. Things like I remember sitting and God bless me, sitting and listening to like the Google conference, the Facebook conference, like watching the whole thing while I was working through the day and like taking notes and then trying to get some work in between. To me, there's a point where you have to prioritize, right? And if you're trying to do your job as a freelancer or as an agency owner and serve your clients well, there's only so much more you can take on in terms of looking at what's happening and what the landscape looks like. And I took my finger off the pulse for a minute there because I just could not keep up and something had to give. I have like subscriptions to certain places that I really trust that will send email updates out. Like Sprout Social is one that I love that keep me in the loop and like mean that I can make those changes without going to the nth degree of how I was sitting there watching the Facebook full conference. So half of it never even bloody came to fruition. And I spent all that time trying to keep my finger on the pulse. It usually works out a lot more effective to lean in and let other people do that for you because they exist. They're there. There's people ready to educate.
I think that's so important. I love that you mentioned that. And I also want to clarify, even if I relate so much to like watching hours and hours of things, but or like going through reports like Mofo. I want to clarify that, as I mentioned, we have a strand that is the agency, even if it's smaller. So obviously, when I say, well, we do a lot of the learning as an agency, it's only because I run a school. So I have to do it for the school. And obviously, if SEO is not my thing, then I get one of our teachers to update us to an event and do things so that we can do that. And then I get a bit of learning myself, but it's not my expertise. But it's the school part that forces me in a good way to become, also very well apt into the agency. If I had an agency and I didn't have a school, probably would do like you said, which I love that you mentioned that as well, finding the right sources to get the information I need. So I think that's the little tweak that we need to remember. Like, not all of us need, tell me what you think about this. I'm going to go a bit controversial. Not all of us need to be marketing educators to be great authoritative marketers in this space. Does it make sense?
Completely agree. I think there's a lot of pressure on us as marketers to be everything, like the marketing unicorn, the marketing wizard. It's constantly a thing in our industry that we're just expected to know everything and be able to do everything. That's not realistic. We are one person, for the most part, even. If you're an agency owner, the buck still starts and ends with you, even if you have a team in place. If you're a freelancer, you're probably solo. So it's physically impossible. There's too much happening. There are too many platforms. In the same way that I can't even relate with being an expert at all the platforms. And I run a social media agency because every platform is so nuanced and it's only from years of experience that you really pick up exactly what the strategy is for that platform. Like Pinterest is the example for me that I'm not in the loop on that.
I was actually thinking about the complexity that we add when it comes to social and the fact that also sometimes, and I again want to hear your opinion because you are a social media agency and also know that there's a social media manager is a big audience that you talk to. There's also then, I think there has to be a differentiation and an understanding of a social media manager as a marketer and a marketer that also has a social media skills. The fact that you can be a marketer without being a social media specialist, and you can be a marketing strategist. That means that you specialize in the strategy bit, but you're more generalist when it comes to the channels. But you can also be a social media kind of focused marketer. And for that, as we mentioned a few times, something will have to give because, as you say, you can't know all the platforms, you can't know all the things. And I wonder whether maybe we will see even more specialism in the social media marketer space instead of being, I can help you with Snapchat. Sorry, Snapchat is the only platform that I never go on with. I can help you with Pinterest, but Facebook is not my main focus. I can help you with LinkedIn, but when it comes to video, actually, Instagram and TikTok are not my realm. I don't know because I understand social is a big part of what we do because it's a big part of the omni-channel kind of wider brand awareness. It's a very easy channel for that. But also, I don't position ourselves as experts in social only because it wouldn't make sense. So I don't know, but I wonder whether that will happen, whether we will focus, people will start to focus more on specific platforms in order to zone in, really zero into something and maybe also beat some of the overwhelm and burnout, which I think we don't talk about enough when it comes to actually being social media managers as well,
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about like what are the trends, what are the changes in the landscape, what are things for people listening who are in the social media or in the marketing space to consider and try and get ahead of, that is one that comes to mind, because I already see Pinterest specialists, Instagram specialists. They're less common. And typically I see, funnily enough, that they specialize more in their service delivery and not so much in who they work with then. They then work with a much broader audience because what they do is so specific. And I think, watch this space. We could, over the next couple of years, really see people lean in. And I say that as a full service, social first agency owner that does a little bit of everything and enjoys to get that generalist, holistic approach to everything. But we might be one of few.
But then I love that you mentioned that, and thank you for sharing that. It might be that then if you grow as an agency, even if it doesn't mean that agency growth has to be 30 people working for you, but even if you start expanding as an agency, maybe it's more of a case of you being the generalist that can then support different specialists within your team.
Yeah.
So I think we also forget about that. I feel that's a way that we can expand then if you want to, then kind of sway into that social media space and actually grow and say, okay, I want to actually step up as an agency and still have the generalist hat for yourself, but then getting the support that you need. Because going back to the learning bit, that's another important thing. Sometimes we forget that regardless of how big your team is, when you have a team, you can have somebody who is your LinkedIn specialist who will really zone into like the LinkedIn side of it, and then they can relay the information for you, and you have that trusted person for your clients. I'm not saying that everybody has to do that, but that I see as another way to still go down that road of specialism without necessarily specializing, because you actually have other people that can support you. I think it can be harder when you are your little old self. And at some point, and that's actually a question to you as well. So many questions to poor Bethany. She wasn't expecting that. I think it's also a question of, if you are a social media manager that doesn't specialize in a platform, like you mentioned, but you specialize more in a specific industry, there's also part of me that wonders whether then maybe the platforms that you focus on will shift because of your industry and because of also the fact that, if everybody's going to LinkedIn, you're going to ask, is LinkedIn going to be a good platform for my audience? Yes or no? God damn it, I need to start learning about LinkedIn. I don't know. Is there something that you have seen as well and that you have kind of experienced or seen for some of your students as well?
Yeah, on both sides, honestly, because firstly, my agency, one of the first hires we did was skills gaps hires. So we hired a graphic designer, we hired a Google Ads specialist, and yeah, we work primarily with B2B. And that means that it's pretty much standard that I'm going to be doing LinkedIn and maybe a few other platforms. We usually will allow kind of up to 3 platforms on our packages, but LinkedIn is usually the priority for them. And yeah, we're not by any means a LinkedIn agency. Like, I would never market myself as that because we do wider things. But if someone were to come to me with issues and queries about LinkedIn and how to make the most of it, I'm going to be much happier in that space than people asking me about threads or people asking me about Pinterest or some of the other platforms that I'm not so au fait with. So yeah, there is an argument to be said there that even if you're generalist, your industry might be forcing you to specialize almost and pushing your hands into a specific direction. Okay. We're talking about that being a potential trend, like this idea of specialization. Is there any other emerging trends that you see starting to kind of poke their heads out?
We talked about behind the scenes, the content pretty much since maybe 2021, when obviously short form video became a lot more popular. But it's actually somebody else's reel, and I don't remember her name. Otherwise, I would have mentioned her because credit what credit's due. But she was talking about having a call with Meta because they were like, Meta decided to have a call with some creators to tell them all the tea. I was like, great, Meta. And they told her that Reels are still going to be pushed a lot, and you want to think about your channel, your platform, your profile as a TV series. And as a TV series lover myself, big fan of Buffy, by the way, showing my age, yay. Buffy, Parks and Rec as well. Parks and Rec is actually more of an adult find, but I think it's great. So if you want any kind of good Prime memes, Park and Rec is great. But the TV series really spoke to me as an idea, not just because I'm a lover of TV series as well, but because it kind of reminded me of the fact that we've seen YouTube as well as a channel growing outside of the YouTubers. And I think the YouTube itself has done it very well when it comes to the series, the repetition, the kind of consistency, and also a lot of that. Even when there is education, there's a bit more of a personal side and reflection on it. And I see that becoming more imbued in all the platforms. I'm going to think a lot about the short form video, the video based first, even if LinkedIn, what I can tell you about LinkedIn as a trend is that LinkedIn is becoming more and more a platform for everybody to actually share their experience, not just their work. So that's one trend that we can talk about. But I want to go back to this one because I think LinkedIn has been talked about so much that we kind of know that we need to start having a look at it, unless yourself already does it anyway. But that TV series approach really spoke to me be how I've seen that people have been using their social to be more giving snippets of their reflections, their days, the things they do. And even if they're talking about tools they love or education, is done in a much more approachable way. So the talking heads element has become really strong, and trends also can fit within that. But I wonder how much we are going to start getting tuned out of a trend for the sake of a trend. Nothing wrong with that if it works for you. But sadly, when I see a trending audio with somebody taking a screenshot of their client's reach and say reading caption, I just walk past it because it's not giving me anything about that person. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but LinkedIn obviously is a big one that I see kind of emerging as in general a trend as a platform that we can make ours a lot more depending regardless of who you are. But also this TV series, this different type of thinking about our content, I think is going to become really big for video-based platforms.
Yeah, I want to touch on that TV series approach actually, because I think that's really interesting. I almost see it as an extension of where TikTok skits started, that they would be just a part one and part two, or maybe part three at a stretch. And like that would kind of be it. The story would be told, summed up with a bow on it, and it's good to go. And there's one creator that comes to mind that I'm noticing is leaning in more on this. So, firstly, I think some of the kind of creator term, influencers are now calling themselves creators more and more. You're seeing more of the kind of fictional approach being taken on TikTok than we have Instagram. I can't remember seeing people doing storytelling in that way where they're kind of creating their own little worlds for a long time. I think it takes me back to Vine when I try and think about that, which again shows my age. But there's a creator called Charlotte, and she's known as the nursery nurse, and she is quite literally creating series that are no longer like a one or two, oh, this parent was a dickhead and came into the nursery and was shouting at everyone, wait until part two to see what we do about it kind of thing. But now she's doing like these fully fledged out stories that are like romance arcs of the characters that were previously just kind of the bad boss, or like they were part of the skit. They are now becoming characters and it's becoming its own TV show. And I do see that approach being done more as well, even in the case of the corporate Natalie's type of accounts. Those skits are extending and becoming longer form content rather than just the part one, part two.
For Natalie, that's I think a great example. So if you don't know, you can go and look at her. And there's also the sales guy, which I think is Sales Bro it's called, and they do a podcast together, so you can find them on her profile a lot as well. And I think that's a great example. Or I don't know if you know her as well, because obviously Bethan mentioned Natalie. There's a lady called Lorraine, I think she is, and she also does a lot of B2B sort of like kind of work kind of videos. And there was one that I just want to mention just to give you an idea, like a very funny one, where she was asking one of her friends how to, which is also I think like a work friend or a businessy friend, how to rephrase some common, words or kind of common rebuttals that you would have in email in a very polite way. So she went really kind of like, what you're saying is bullshit. I hope I can swear. And I was like, how can I say this in a professional and polite way to my colleagues? And he will give the option of like, how could you reframe that? So things like this, when they become a little story, they become a little serious, but in a way that I think is a bit less, not forced necessarily, but it's also more unique. It's not the same kind of series of things. I think food creators do that also really well. They kind of find what series their audience loves. There was one creator that did it, all the different things that you can do to reduce waste and use some of the food instead of waste.
Yeah.
They're not groundbreaking when you think about it, but it's nice. And also, one final note on this. When you think about it, also put less pressure on the different plethora of types of content that you had to create that might be dictated by, again, this trend is good. I'm going to give another cringe example. And you can be one camp. Usually I find camp, I love it or hate it. The middle ground is hard to find, again, talking about middle grounds. The reading caption thing. We were told that we had to do it all the time. Now, people say that they hate it. I personally am not a fan of it, unless I give value and then I say reading caption for more. But I give you something already, and then I'm like, well, I'm going to put the link in the caption, or I'm going to tell you how to sign up in the caption. That I understand. That actually is not a stupid thing, but I think that kind of, this is how I do this, reading caption.
Yeah.
It's very polarizing. But 6 months ago, we were told that was the way to go. So these things, they can shift and evolve. So when you find out something that works for you, that is unique to you, that speaks to your audience, I think it's going to put a lot less pressure on us to constantly come up with content that doesn't literally have a shelf life because collectively we switch off from it. How
Mhm.
do you find it, by the way, the recaption thing?
I, you know what? I don't love it because again, I feel like we're teasing the audience, and like once or twice you can be like, "Oh, you got me. That was good." But now it's been overused. I feel like that's gotten old, is my take. But you know what? When we're talking about trends, I feel the same about like the B-roll faceless video trend, getting these really aesthetic videos that are stock videos with a little bit of value scattered on the screen on and off throughout the video length. That seems to be like rising and also being ripped apart at the same time. I feel like one of the trends is actually that trends are coming and going a lot quicker than they used to be in the short video space. Stuff used to stick around and be popular for a few months at least with content types like that, usually a year. Like you could get away with content types for a long time. It was more the trending audios that would come in and out of fashion. But now I'm seeing that even the content types and the approach that you make are becoming trends in themselves. It's just the evolution of the platform. I feel that like people are growing with short form videos. So naturally there's a different approach and a different set of thinking to that. But yeah, that's one of the big things that I've noticed in the landscape so far is the speed in which trends come in and out of popularity.
That's a great one. There's actually, I can see that too. So I'm going to +1 that one. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, if you feel that that works for you and that's what you want to go, that's fine. There's also an element of experimentation, but hopefully we give some ideas as well on how you can find some things that can really work well for you. And when you do, they can become the bread and butter of what you do, because I genuinely find that, there's still an element of just more and more wanting to either connect with people or just get a bit of levity and little things from the creators, even when you're a business, rather than being heavily educated. Like I think that has kind of shifted a lot. One final note, if there's any output to anybody, we did a survey, little point, good to do little surveys, simple on our stories, very simple. I got people right at the time, I think it was over the Christmas holidays. So then I know that if you do something, it's not too much hassle, they would kind of tell us what they liked. And I was really surprised when I said, just to give an example, I asked a couple of questions, and one was about, I think I want new courses when they come out. And I was like, what kind of content would you like to see to talk about that? Just like an announcement. Announcement actually wasn't the one that was chosen the least, because I was surprised, because you're like, it's not really a lot of value in that. But people were like, no, actually, I don't mind that, just to tell me is that. But one of the ones that was the most requested, actually, I'm going to let you guess. You and the listener, we have two big ones: behind the scenes or a short video explainer of what the course is about. Which one do you think won?
Behind the scenes, surely, right? No,
I was really
really?
surprised. They would rather have myself and I, see, the hostess with the mostess. Just tell them like, hey, this is the thing, this is what you're gonna learn, this is what the teacher is, if it's not
Yeah.
myself. And come and join us if you're interested. If you're ready,
Mm.
or if this is what you want to learn this right now, hop in.
Yeah,
Really
that's a
surprised myself.
really good indicator of a warm audience there, though. Like they're ready to find out more about the product that you've got available. I'm really interested in that because I will binge watch behind the scenes and day in the life. Maybe it's because YouTube was like a big part of the content that I took in growing up. Like Instagram wasn't really around until I was in uni that it started to gain more popularity. So I at like 15, 16, or I'm bored, it wasn't scrolling through Instagram or scrolling through TikTok. It was watching YouTube videos, and that vlog style still carries through, but more so in the behind the scenes type content than anywhere else. So maybe I'm just biased.
I'm gonna give us a caveat super quickly though. People still wanted to see more of the behind the scenes on how we evolved and how we changed it. So it does depend. That's why I say like there are some outliers, but people were like, well, if we got a new event or like a short course, like in a training, I just want to know what it's about and if it's good for me and what's in it. And they like the video format instead of the carousel, for example, that jumped out more. So
Yeah.
yeah, there is a place, I think, even on our audience for the behind the scenes, but it's more about kind of then the breakdown of what we're doing a bit more, or what it looks like behind the scenes, because it's live. So there's the core element that's there, there's the interactiveness. But if it's something that is more about what am I going to learn, yeah, our audience is like, just tell it to me straight, which was really refreshing to me, because it's also the easiest format for me to
Yeah.
produce today, as you can all tell.
Oh, amazing. And when we're talking about trends, then I know that you are like the systems queen. So how do you consider and like keep systems in place to make sure that you're keeping in track of the trends and changes? Like what does that mean to you?
I use Notion a lot. You can use anything else, but I'm going to go with the
Hmm.
Notion because that's what we use. Is our Notion Inspiration Bank. It had different names, but
Nice.
it's kind of what it says in the tin. And some of our students and people in the community use it. You can use it for whatever you wish. You can use it to store trends. What I like about it, one, obviously collecting the data is easy, so that's a good thing. Two, you collect all the data in one place. I talk about it in our certification all the time when it comes to content systems and workflows. It's good that you can save things on TikTok and Instagram and such, but if that was the only place that you were on, that's fine. But most of us are on multiple platforms. So unless it's more about quick reference, if it's something that really matters to you that you're going to action, I always suggest having it all in one place. And three, you can categorize. And I'm a Virgo and I live by my Virgoness. I embody it so badly that I physically need to categorize things. And finally, actually, fourthly, you can add statuses if you want to. So I think that's also really powerful. Is it something that is relevant? Is it something that you need to archive? I think archiving is so underrated because it's still there if you need it, but it's away from your beautiful brain and we forget about it all the time. So that's why our brains sometimes are overwhelmed, is because we don't move things out of the way when we're done with that. So that would be the main system that comes to mind. But as you can see, I'm very system oriented because I want to have as much brain space for my creativity to have fun. And I think creativity and curiosity are two of the most undertapped skills of marketers. We know they're important, we love them, but we tend to kind of put them all the way to the back of priorities to actually cultivate because we don't have time, because we're overworked. On average, a marketer works on 9 campaigns at a time, according to HubSpot. 9 campaigns is a lot. So if we actually can create systems, I know it's crazy. That was from 2023, so we're not talking about 10 years ago. So if I can reclaim my space, we actually have great systems and processes. So hopefully this gives you an example of what that can feel like for a very tangible thing.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I think systems are the less sexy, but like biggest impact sort of stuff when it comes to talking about business and creation. I definitely noticed that when I started freelancing and working for myself, my plate became a lot more full, and all of a sudden I found it much more difficult to be creative because I just didn't have the headspace. There's a quote that is like, creative people need time to sit in silence and like just not do anything, and that's where the creativity come from. It's the whole concept that your best ideas always come in the shower, right? Like they're never when you need them, when you're on your computer. And I didn't have that because I was either in social media manager mode, I was either in email marketer mode, or I was in business owner mode. And I didn't have the time and the space to allow that creativity. But having systems lets you, almost like you said, deload your mind so that your mind has the space. Your mind has room to play and for those little sparks to start appearing again. Okay. I want to change topic slightly because I feel like we would be remiss when we're talking about marketing and the future of marketing to not talk about the world of AI. And I see it continue to advance. I see it to continue to be a bigger part of the space. We've seen more in terms of short video. AI tools are starting to become more popular, AI agencies appearing. But I'm curious your take on, how do you see these having an impact into the marketing space over the next few years? And do you think that they're going to have as big of an impact as people are predicting?
AI won't steal your job, but a marketer who knows how to use AI might do. And I think that's what we need to understand it. The difference. We talked about curiosity and creativity being two undertapped skills. Those are so powerful as a human to human level that I see that if I can use, and I do personally use AI to help me with analysis, with research, just menial stuff. Last night to do HTML stuff, which is I could do, but it's boring as hell and it takes me forever. So data entry, all these things. If I can get that to be done, or another shout out is to Heather Murray as well, who's going to do some workshops with us and some talks with us about AI. She's brilliant. So, find people that really know their stuff. And she showed also how you can use AI to help you either proofread. This is how I see it being implemented in a way that feels natural, that can feel honest, that can feel impactful. One more thing I'm going to say, one of the things that I do is that I love dictating. I dictate the answer to emails as well sometimes because life is too short and I got so many emails to get back to. So sometimes I dictate what one of my posts is going to be like. And obviously the dictation is a bit wonky or it doesn't have the formatting, but I have sheets that has the tone of voice and and examples of other posts. And then all I say is keep the exact words, or unless there's some grammar check, but keep almost the same words, just format it in my tone of voice. So
Mm.
basically, it's kind of taking my words and just making sure that it's tidy and neat and not a hot mess of a lump. That's how I use it, for example, because it feels right to me. So again, going back to what Farouk mentioned, AI won't take your job, but somebody, a marketer who knows how to use AI might do. So
Yeah.
there are ways to use them. And there are ways to use it to your advantage. And if it can give you more space to be creative and curious and really connect to your clients and, connect on the person to person level, if you use it that way, I think there's a lot of potential there.
I love that. I'm really glad you said that because I see lots of people rave about the copywriting capabilities. And I see a lot of people talk about how social media managers and copywriters are going to be dead within the next 5 years because ChatGPT are going to kind of override it. And I really struggle with using it to create content. I don't allow the team in the agency to use it in that way right now because we had some issues with people in the past that it was you can clock it immediately. And that's not the quality of content that we want to create. But I love it. I just don't use it in that way. I don't use it for copywriting. A lot of people will say it's great to come up with a framework of a post and then work on it from there. I disagree. I think if we can come strategy first from ourselves and know a topic and know an approach that's relevant to what we want to cover and the strategy we're trying to come at it from, can we do it that way round and have then the robots, the AI, fill in the gaps and elevate us rather than us letting it lead what we should be talking about and potentially missing the mark of our strategic input. So I'm really happy to hear that. And I find it interesting because I see a shift. I see more people now are starting to do things like you are, rather than before it was kind of use it to come up with your ideas was the pretty much generic advice.
Or run away from it totally, which can be done.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it can't be done, but being honest, there are so many things that we're not doing that 10 years ago were like, sorry, what? I would never use that. And again, we are of the generation showing my age, probably our age, of the first phones were as big, Gen Z, be terrified, as big as a book, as big as a goddamn. They had an antenna that was as long as a straw. It was, and we're like, oh, nobody's going to use that. I mean, sorry, one final just bit of levity
Go
here.
for it.
When you had to wait for the Wi-Fi and the router, and that sound of like, you will know what it is. If you're a millennial, you will know what that is. And just looking at the thing spinning and be like, I just need to send one email. I just need to open one page. Please, God, help me. Things have changed. And so what we thought 10 years ago wasn't possible, now it is. And what now we are questioning is going to become more of a norm. And I think there's also a lot of reframing when it comes to AI itself and agencies and tools to actually make it more of a companion. So it's all about understanding that, I think. And then if we are good humans and we use things in the right way, then, following, lead by example, or in our case, lead by education. That's why I really want to talk about this more. I want to get more people that know their shizzle to talk about it more, because without the education, I cannot expect our students to know what to do sometimes. That is a new topic. So they might be having questions that they feel afraid to answer. And I want to bring the best people in to answer these questions in a safe space.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. It's been fascinating chatting to you about all of this. And I think it's nice when you get the opportunity to come together with somebody and just share like, well, this is where I'm at. What about you? And really reflect on the state of play in the marketing universe right now. So I've got to thank you for your time and say to everybody, please do go and check the links in the description. I'm going to have the workshops that Fab has mentioned, but also her website, her Instagram, everywhere that you can connect with her so that you can go and keep up with her on socials. And I can vouch that I follow the podcast account on TikTok and I'm constantly commenting and checking in because it's great. So I'm sure you'll all love it as well.
Thank you so much for having me. And if you just remember one thing, like from me at least, is that honestly, good marketing is not just about minds, it's about hearts too. So if you keep that in mind, a lot of things will look a lot better.
Amazing. Thank you.